Looks like we're live.
Yes, we are live in Facebook land. All right, folks. For those of you who are on the Zoom call, I'm now going to mute everybody except for Vanessa, because obviously we want to hear from her. And looks like everyone is muted. All right. So, hello, everybody. Wow, this is exciting. So we're actually doing our very first live stream from Zoom to Facebook. It's very strange watching two windows of myself talking. And I'm delighted to have you all here tonight for our conversation with Vanessa Wideski. And this program is presented in partnership with our great friends over at the House Sound Women's Center. We're really delighted to be partnering with them. Allison from the Women's Center is on the talk tonight, so we might hear from her at some point. But we are here for an event called Freedom Starts From Within, Prevent and Heal from Toxic Relationships. And we have a very knowledgeable speaker with us this evening. Vanessa Wideski is the Executive Director of the Low Entropy Foundation, and she has a lot of knowledge to share with us tonight. I am really delighted to be hosting her. This was actually the night we were supposed to host our in-person talk as well, so it worked out perfectly that we're able to move this talk to a remote setting and enjoy the fruits of all these great technologies. So I'm going to stop talking because it's time for us to hear from Vanessa. The last thing I'll say before I go is the folks in the Zoom call know that they can comment using the chat feature if they have questions during Vanessa's talk. And the same goes on our Facebook Live. If you want to type questions into the Facebook comments field, we will have time for a Q&A at the end of this event. So feel free to ask your questions there. Okay, Vanessa, take it away.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to now just share my screen and let's see here, share screen 2. And I will bring up this PowerPoint from the current slide. Okay. All right. Can you see that? Yeah? Okay. Awesome. All right. So you are seeing, let's see, stop share. You're seeing that screen. So I actually want to switch it. Sorry, my camera is on. Display settings, swap presenter view. No, you know what? I'll just go from here. Okay. Well, thank you for that, for having me here, for having me join you. And yeah, I'm super happy that we were able to do this tonight because originally I was going to be in Whistler and I actually planned a big girls trip up there. So me and some other lady friends were going to go up there and yeah, share this presentation in person with the Whistler community. But this is just as good, if not better, because now we're all in the comfort of our own home and we're connecting against all odds. So I'm really happy that we were able to make this happen. And I'm honored to be able to share this with everyone. Thank you, everybody, for being here. So a little bit about me is I am a mom of 2 amazing kids, Noah and Nala. And before becoming a mother, though, I was very much a free spirit, traveling the world, trying to understand my purpose in life, trying to figure out, you know, what I'm doing here and what life is all about. What is this reality? I had this insatiable curiosity to understand myself and my place in the world. And this took me down some pretty dark paths, but it also took me to a lot of amazing adventures as well. I lived in different Buddhist monasteries and I learned how to meditate. I did a pilgrimage throughout Europe, the Camino de Santiago, where I walked 900 kilometers, tried to find myself on that journey. I lived with the Hare Krishna in Hawaii. I lived with a pastor, a Christian family. So I dabbled in religion, philosophy, spirituality. And at one point I even did a 40-day water fast, thinking that I would reach enlightenment like Jesus or Gandhi. But I just got really hungry. So enlightenment doesn't come easy, I found. And I realized that life is what you make of it. Purpose is whatever meaning you give to it. So I came back to Canada and I found a job. I got situated, bought a home, met a guy, had babies, got married, started a business, and I settled into this typical North American lifestyle. And everything changed for me 5 years ago when I divorced. My husband and I divorced, and I found myself single and back into the dating scene. And so this is where my story begins in terms of how I ended up here tonight on this call, sharing a workshop about toxic relationships, how to end toxic relationships, how to heal from toxic relationships, and how to prevent yourself and friends and family from entering into a highly dysfunctional relationship. And more importantly, how to attract and create a healthy relationship and what that looks like. So how did I end up here? Well, when I divorced, I went out and I started dating, and I met somebody, and we dated for a little while, and then it didn't work out. Then I met somebody else and we dated for a while and it didn't work out. And after that, I thought, you know what, I really need to just be okay with being by myself. And so I made a commitment to stay single and celibate for 1 year. And I did. I took that year and I learned about myself, and I got clear on who I was. And that year actually turned into 2 years. And after 2 years, I felt really good about myself. And so I put myself back out there and I started dating again. And right away, I met somebody, and he seemed like a really kind man. And that's what I was looking for. I'm like, I'm done with jerks. I've had my fair share of jerks, and I don't want that anymore. I want somebody who's just kind and gentle and has a big heart. And so I met this guy, and he was all those things. And we were dating, and after about a week and a half, I invited him out to a party, a Christmas party. And I was going to have some family there, like my stepmom and my little sister were going to be there. So pretty serious to invite him to this. So the day of the party arrives, and that day I text him in the morning, and I'm like, hey, can't wait to see you tonight. What time do you want me to pick you up? And he doesn't respond. So I'm like, oh, okay, it's okay. He must be busy, right? So I wait and a few hours go by and still nothing. I'm like, okay, well, I'll just give him a call. So I called him later that afternoon and no answer. So I'm like, oh, what the hell? He just like disappeared on me. And that was the first time ever that I had been ghosted. And that brought up a lot of insecurities for me. I took 2 years to be good with myself, and I go back out there, and right off the bat, I get ghosted. I fall for this guy, and then he just disappears. So I'm laying in bed, and I'm all upset and feeling rejected and abandoned, and all these insecurities come up. And something that I do to make myself feel better is I look at different memes and like quotes that are uplifting and inspirational. And so I come across this one meme, and it says this: they didn't leave you. I moved them out of your way. The universe. And so on that note, I was like, yeah, that's right. He didn't leave me. Something better is going to come into my life. I don't need him. And I started feeling good about myself, and I decided to post on Facebook, as you do, to share. I'm very open and vocal, and I like to share how I'm feeling, what's going on. So this is what I posted on Facebook. This is the condensed version. I said that I know my worth, and I won't settle for anything less. And then I want to eventually co-create a loving relationship, but I'm in no rush to make it so, because I know what I bring to the table, and I'm not afraid to eat alone. And I felt strong. I was like, yeah, that's right. I know what I bring to the table. And I wrote a little bit more about how I'm focusing on myself and making myself a priority and not relying on a man. And from there, I also shared a little meme. And the meme that I shared was this little cartoon, this woman laying in bed saying, I just love knowing that with you, the more I put in, the more I get out. I love how safe I feel that you'll never suddenly leave me for no reason. Good night, babe. I love you. And she's hugging her career. And for me, that was symbolic of me, you know, taking care of me and my career and my family and prioritizing myself. So I shared that and I felt good. And I got up, took a shower, and made my way to this party. I'm like, I don't need him. I'll go to the party. Even though everybody's expecting me to bring this date that I've been talking about, I'll show up. I'll tell them I got ghosted. It's okay. I know my worth. So I drive to the party. And as I'm driving there, I start reaffirming my worth to myself. And I'm saying, yeah, you know what? I didn't need him. In fact, if I'm going to have somebody in my life, not only do I want somebody who's kind and caring, but I want somebody who's smart and sexy and funny, and I want it all. I'm not going to settle. So I get to the party, and I remember I pull up and I find parking. And as I go up to the house, I see this guy standing out front, and I say to him, I'm like, hey, I'm here for the party. And he's like, the party? Oh, and he's like, oh, it must be my tenant downstairs. Yeah, it's around back. So I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm thinking, oh, a party in a basement suite. Okay, this is going to be cozy. So I go around back, and I can see in the sliding door, I see the kitchen, and there's just 5 people sitting around a table having dinner. And I see my stepmom and my sister, and I'm like, oh, it's not really a party. It's like a dinner get together. So they open the door for me, and I'm like, hey, and they're like, oh, wait. And there's a guy there, and he's like, he gives me his seat, and I sit down. He's like, oh, can I get you anything? Here, have my plate. Here, let me get you a drink. And he's so attentive and hot. And then we start talking, and he tells me he's single. And he also tells me that he's been dating, but that he knows his worth, and he's not going to settle for anything. He says to me that he wants to co-create a healthy relationship. But again, he's not in a rush because he knows what he brings to the table. Sound familiar? That's like what I posted only a few hours ago. I posted the words that he was saying. And so when I heard him say these things, I immediately got a little paranoid. And I'm like, okay, who showed him my Facebook post? But then the more I talked to him, I realized, and he told me that he's not on social media. And in fact, there was no way he could have seen it because he was there the whole time. So what I did is the words that he said to me, I added meaning, and I made it mean that him and I were meant to be together. And immediately he asked me out. A few days later, he took me on our first date. We went to Ambleside Park in North Vancouver, or West Vancouver. And we had a beautiful romantic walk. And after that, he was whining and dining me, and he was smart, he was sexy, he was funny, all the things that I said I wanted. And he seemed to have all the same interests, everything that I loved, he loved too. And I felt for him. Very soon, him and I moved out together. And only a couple months after we were living together, he took me back to the spot where he took me on our first date. And Ambleside Park, we went for a walk there. And as we're walking on the seawall, we come across this rose, and it's sitting there on the seawall. And he goes up to the rose and he picks it up and he gives it to me. And I'm like, what are you doing? Because there's a woman sitting right by there. And I'm like, that's the lady's rose. And then the lady stands up and she takes off her glasses and her hat. And it's actually my really good friend, Angelica. And she turns to me, and then our song comes on. And he turns to me and he reads this beautiful message that Angelica had wrote for me. And he finishes the message by saying, I'm so grateful that you made a sister and a friend in Angelica, because if you hadn't have met her, your path may never have led you to me. And then he gives me the rose and kisses me, and we continue on our walk. And this happens 6 more times along the seawall with 6 more roses and 6 more friends, until we finally get to the end of our walk and we reach the boardwalk. And at the boardwalk, I see my 2 beautiful babies, my kids, Noah and Nala. And our song is playing. And he gets down on one knee and he asks me to be his wife. He asked me to spend the rest of his life with him. And so, of course, this was like one of the most the most romantic thing that has ever happened to me. And I say yes, and I'm smitten. Yeah, he had me. I fell head over heels. It felt like I was living a fairy tale, only we didn't live happily ever after. Because shortly thereafter, after this experience, I started noticing that he had a bit of a temper problem. He would get angry with me if I was 5 minutes late coming home from when I said I would come home. He'd get mad. He'd think that, you know, I was maybe talking to somebody behind his back or talking to a guy. He was very suspicious. And I would always make excuses for him. And I'd be like, well, he says that because he loves me so much and he doesn't want to lose me. And I would make up these excuses, but after time, it just got worse. His anger issues turned into not just once a week, but it happened every few days. You know, he would get so mad at me for things that I was just being myself, but maybe if I said the wrong thing or I did the wrong thing, he would get mad. He would get mad and then he would give me the silent treatment. He wouldn't talk to me. And sometimes he would get so mad that he would just blow up and he would say, that's it, I'm done. I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. Give me the ring back. And he would take that ring and he would end it. He'd end the relationship. And I would be devastated because this was my Prince Charming who made this big display of love in front of my friends and my family, my kids. And I was devastated. And so I would say to him, no, we have to work this out. You can't just leave. We love each other. And the next day he would say, okay, we'll work it out. Give me the ring back. And he'd, sorry, baby, I don't know what came over me. And then he would be back to Prince Charming. And that would last for maybe a day or two. And then the cycle would happen all over again. And this happened about 6 times over the course of 9 months. Till finally, in the 9th month, he got so upset with me because I was watching a DVD in our bedroom. And he was mad at me because I was watching a DVD in our bedroom. And he came into the room and he started yelling at me for watching this. It was like Die Hard or something. I don't know what the movie was, but it was just a typical movie. And he didn't want me to do that. So he came in, freaked out, turned off the DVD player. And I left the room, went into the living room. He followed me in there, started berating me and yelling at me, putting me down, calling me names. I was trying to tune him out. And then he attacked me. And it eventually ended up with him picking me up and throwing me down on the edge of our bed. I fell down and my back was injured too. This happened about a year ago, and I still am suffering from a back injury because of that incident. And that was the final straw. When that happened, I knew that I had to get out of that relationship. I knew that this was not healthy. I knew that something was wrong. And so I did. I got out of the relationship, but it was one of the hardest things that I've ever done. And I've done a lot of things, but breaking free from that relationship, it was one of the most challenging things ever, because I was experiencing depression, suicidal thoughts. I didn't know who I was, and I lost myself. I went from being this happy-go-lucky, positive woman that took 2 years to get there, to then in 9 months, I became this destroyed, fragile woman who didn't know who she was anymore. But I got out of that situation, and now I realize that it happened for a reason. It happened so that I could learn, so that I could grow, and so that I could help others. And that's what I'd like to do today, is I'd like to take my experience and share it so that I can help others. Because this happens to so many women and men. 1 in 5 women experience some form of abuse in an intimate partner relationship. And the majority of the victims, yes, they are female, so accounting for 83% of victims, but there are men that this happened to as well. And the thing is, most of the time men don't speak up because of the shame that comes with being put down by somebody else, by a woman, if you're put down by someone, a lot of shame comes with that. You think that there's something wrong with you. So most of the time, men and women don't speak up. They don't share their experience. Every year in Canada, over 250,000 children are witness to family violence. They experience this firsthand, and that's why it's generational and it gets passed down. The most shocking statistic is that every week, a woman in Canada alone, is killed due to intimate partner violence. Every week, somebody is dying. And again, these are only statistics based on people who have spoken up. So today I want to address why this happens, how it happens, and how can you break free of this and help others. Now, one of the issues and the topics that I want to look at is narcissistic personality disorder. The reason that we'll address this is because oftentimes when you're in this highly dysfunctional relationship, you're dealing with somebody who has a personality disorder. So we're going to talk about that a little bit and see what that looks like. We're also going to cover codependency. That's the counterpart, people who get involved in these relationships with narcissists. They're often codependent. So we'll look at that. Then we'll look at the relationship that's formed, which is called a trauma bond, when these two people get together and they have this obsessive kind of addiction to each other. That's called a trauma bond. So we'll look into the details of that. And then how do you break free of the trauma bond? You have to find your self-worth. So we'll look at some strategies for that. And we'll end with setting clear boundaries so that this never happens again. Before we get into it, I'm going to start with the narcissistic personality disorder. And I want to just share that a disclaimer is that I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm simply a woman who has a lot of life experience dealing with toxic relationships and removing myself from toxic relationships and then helping others to also do the same. So the first thing that I thought we could look at is the Bible for psychiatry. And this is what demonstrates and shows all of the different disorders that are apparent in our society. So the DSM-5, this dates back to the 19th century, but it took a hold, it took root after the World War II, when all the VA, they needed a way to diagnose and to understand all the vets that were coming back from war, because they had all these mental health difficulties. So they referred to this DSM-5, and now it's the Bible. Again, it's the Bible of psychiatry. If somebody has a personality disorder, they can only be diagnosed by a psychiatrist, but it helps to understand the traits of somebody who may have a disorder, because oftentimes people who have disorders, they never go to get help. That's one of the characteristics, is that they think there's nothing wrong with them. So oftentimes they go undiagnosed and they run rampant throughout society, and they don't know that there's anything wrong with them, and therefore we don't think that there's anything wrong with them. And often we think something's wrong with us rather than seeing that actually no, the problem lies with them. So that's why I want to give a top level overview of what a narcissist is. Okay, so basically the DSM-5, it explains that there's 3 different clusters of personality disorders. And the 3 different clusters, they're grouped in A, B, or C. I'm going to just pause right there because I can't see the chat right now, and I think that there may be some questions that come up, and I just want to make sure that I can bring up the chat. Let's see. Yeah, I don't see the chat button here. Let's see.
Vanessa, if you'd like, I have the chat open, so I can let you know at the end if any questions come up.
Okay, that works too. Yeah, if anybody has like a really pressing question, then you feel free to interrupt me, and I can address it. Okay, awesome. So the cluster B personality disorder, those are the ones that I wanted to look at, because that's where the narcissistic personality disorder falls under. So if you hear people refer to, oh yeah, they have cluster B personality, then you know that they're referring to the narcissistic personality disorder. Something else that's really interesting to note is that these are all high level. So there's other personality disorders that fall within these. For example, if you look at cluster B personality disorders, the very first one, antisocial personality disorder, APD, within that is a sociopath, psychopath, they all share similar traits, and all of these are overlapping. So yes, they can be very, very dangerous to be involved with somebody of this caliber. A narcissistic personality disorder is no joke. I mean, that's where the abuse comes in, because they feel as though they are the victims. They don't know that there's anything wrong with them, and they very rarely, if ever, seek out help. So it's good to know that if you're dealing with somebody that is in the cluster B personality disorder, you need professional help. You don't go at it alone, or else you'll end up a statistic. Every week, or every 6 days, a woman in Canada dies because of this. So don't end up as a statistic, and get help. We can't do it alone, right? So just to go into NPD a little bit further, how do you diagnose somebody? Again, it needs to be diagnosed by a psychiatrist. But if you want to look at the characteristics, then all you need to do is look at the top 3. I know the DSM-5, it says here, they need to show 5 or more of the following 9 traits that I'll show you. But the top 3 that I'm going to show you are really the only 3 that you need to pay attention to. And they're the 3 E's. Very simple and easy to remember, the 3 E's. The first one is entitlement. So somebody that has a sense of entitlement, they feel like the world owes them, like they can budge in front of the line, they deserve certain discounts, rules don't apply to them. That's a sign of a narcissist. That's one of the 3 E's. Okay, so that's the first one, entitlement. The second one is exploitation. So what is exploitation? It's basically using people, right? Using people for their own advantage, taking advantage of other people for their own benefit, and not caring about what happens to anyone else. As long as they can get ahead, and if it's at the expense of others, who cares? Because as long as they're getting ahead, then that's all that matters. That's what exploitation is. Okay, now the third E is empathy or lack thereof. So somebody who is incapable of picking up on someone else's feelings. They don't care about what other people feel, think, or say. All they care about is themselves. They're in it for themselves. It's me, myself, and I. So those are the 3 E's. Now, I know it says here 5, but if you identify somebody that has these 3 E's, why would you want to associate with them, right? So if you see the 3 E's, I say run for the hills, because you don't want to be in a relationship with that person. But just to go on with what the DSM-5 says, the other characteristics are, this one's very common, commonly referred to as a narcissist, is somebody who has a grandiose sense of self-importance. They think highly of themselves. They have a big ego. Or the belief that one is special. They're special, more special than anyone else, and that only other special people can understand them or relate to them. They need to associate with other special people. Someone who has a need for excessive admiration. They always need to be reassured and told how amazing they are. It's a daily basis. On a daily basis, they need to be told over and over again how much you love them, how much you care about them. And it's because they have very low self-worth. They have very low self-esteem, and they get their self-worth externally from other people through validation. Another characteristic is that they're very arrogant. They're very self-centered. They're all in it for themselves. They have a preoccupation with fantasies of success and power and brilliance. They're always talking about how successful they will be, and how it's due to them, and how powerful they are, how amazing they are. They believe that they are the object of envy. So they think that everyone is envious of them. They think, oh, look, everybody's staring at me. Like, why do people always look at me? Oh, it must be my good looks. Or these are the signs of a narcissist. Now, there are 4 main types of narcissists, and many of these types overlap. The most common one is the grandiose narcissist. So this is someone who's very flamboyant, very assertive, very domineering, and often found in leadership positions. The tricky thing about this is they can be very charming and charismatic. And so people gravitate towards this energy that they put off, because they are so grandiose and flamboyant. A lot of a lot of people like them, but that can be dangerous if you like a narcissist and you invest your time and energy into a narcissist, because again, they exploit and they use people. Another type of narcissist is the malignant narcissist. So this is somebody who is always shifting their perspectives or their beliefs. They're highly sensitive. They have a very fragile ego. They're hostile and they're domineering. They can also come across as very paranoid. So that's the malignant narcissist. Keep in mind that a lot of these can overlap too. It's not black or white. A lot of them are not just one or the other. They overlap and they share some of the traits, but they're usually one prominent type, and then they share some of the other type of characteristics. Okay, then there's the covert narcissist. So this one is more subtle and harder to identify because they can come across as shy. They can come across as introverts, but they do so in a very passive aggressive way, where they blame others for their woes, or they give their loved ones the silent treatment when they're upset. So that's called a covert narcissist. And then the last one is, again, another one that is tricky to identify, and this is the communal narcissist. So this one is always out there helping people, or so it seems to be, that they're helping people and they're giving to charity, and maybe they're all over social media and they're taking selfies about how they've made this big donation to a charity or how they fed the homeless, and they're showcasing it everywhere. Like, look at me, look at how great I am, look at what I'm doing, I've got such a big heart. They talk about how empathetic they are and how they're always, there for others, and they're kind of bragging about it. That's the communal narcissist. And oftentimes when we hear about somebody doing these things, kind people give others the benefit of the doubt. So when we hear this, we don't see it as bragging. We see it as, wow, that's amazing that you're doing that. But it's important to pay attention, because usually good people, they don't need to showcase or display all the good things that they do, because they know that they're good people and they don't have to demonstrate that externally. So that's those are the different types of narcissists that are prevalent in our society. Again, the tricky thing is they can be charismatic, they can be charming, but don't let that confuse you. We have to be aware, and not only pay attention to what people are saying, but pay attention to how people show up on a daily basis and how people relate to others and treat others, especially when there's no benefit for them. If there's no benefit for them and they treat people still with the same respect and kindness that they treat everyone with, then that's usually an indication that they're a good person. But if they brush people off, if they're rude to waiters or staff, then you might want to pay more attention and maybe possibly distance yourself from somebody of that nature. Okay, so that's what a narcissist is. And basically, when it boils down to it, you can tell people that, this is a joke, but it's true. It's that narcissists often think of themselves so highly, like they are kind of these godlike people that deserve everything, that they're entitled to everything. But the reason they do that is because they're lacking highly in self-esteem. Now, why on earth would anybody want to be involved with somebody like that? Aside from the fact that they can be charismatic and charming, that wears off. And when you really get to know somebody, you see their true colors, why would you still stay with somebody who displays all these characteristics that are not pleasant, not optimal? The type of person that does that is, right now, the label for it, the kind of the label that is out there in the masses is called codependency. So somebody who's codependent, who's highly reliant on other people. It has a negative connotation to it. And when I first read about codependency, I didn't want to identify with that, because I see myself as very independent. I'm an independent woman. I'm self-made. I do my own thing. I'm a single mom. I take care of my own. So codependency doesn't resonate. But the more I dove into it and I understood what it really meant, the more and more I saw myself in the description of what a codependent person is like. So I'm going to give you a few different definitions. The first one is from the Oxford Dictionary, and it explains that it's an excessive emotional or psychological reliance on a partner, typically one who requires support on account of an illness or addiction, right? So an illness could be a personality disorder, or it could be a mental health illness, or it could be a physical illness, but somebody who needs help. Now, if you are relying on this person, you're relying on them by giving to them and helping them. Now, because you're helping them so much, you feel needed, you feel wanted, and you feel good about yourself. But you're actually depending on them to feel good about yourself. So that's a little bit about codependency, according to this one definition. Another definition is by Melody Beattie. She says that codependents are reactionaries. They overact, they underact, but rarely do they act. So Melody Beattie, she wrote the famous book, Codependent No More. I highly recommend it. It's a really good starting place to understand about the nature of a codependent. And I really like this definition because it's true. Codependents, they don't really know who they are, or what they need or what they want, because they're so preoccupied with everybody else and trying to make everyone else happy. So they react to, oh, this person needs my help. Okay, let me go help them. Or sometimes they're overwhelmed by having to help everybody else, that they kind of get numb to it. And that's how they underreact. Or they become numb to their own feelings and they underreact to themselves. Maybe they start developing physical issues, physical conditions. And the reason for that is because internally their soul, their spark is screaming out to them, hey, pay attention to me, I need help, rather than going externally and helping all these other people. But instead of paying attention to themselves, they underreact and they try to compensate by helping others. So that's Melody Beattie's definition. Now, this one is by Ross Rosenberg, and he says that codependency is an outdated term that connotes weakness. Instead, a replacement term is self-love deficit disorder. I highly resonate with that because it explains exactly what's going on in the description itself. It's a self-love deficit disorder. See, we codependents lack in our own self-worth and how we feel about ourselves. We have a deficit of self-love. So in order to fill ourselves up with love, we look externally. We look to other people. If I can help you, then you're going to love me. So let me just help you so I can get your love. We're basically operating from an empty cup when we're going to other people to fill up our cups so we can feel good about ourselves. We're doing it in, I guess, a healthier way than narcissists, because narcissists are doing the same thing, right? Narcissists don't feel good about themselves, and instead they need validation from others, but they do it in a very negative way. So narcissists are takers, where they're taking from others to feel good about themselves. Codependents are givers. They're giving to others to feel good about themselves. And I don't know about you, but I'd much rather hang out with codependents than a narcissist. But I mean, it's important to understand though, both ways of going about are unhealthy. And there's a better way to conduct your life and to live your life without having to be a codependent or a narcissist. There is a happy medium. And we're going to get to that in just a little bit here. I just wanted to share one last definition. So codependents are people pleasers. Often they have no idea what they want, what their needs are, or what their boundaries look like. Everything is about making sure that others are happy. And I don't know how many of you can relate to that, but I definitely relate to that. Making sure everybody else is happy and taking care of ourselves last, right? Well, that doesn't work. That only works for so long. Eventually, we are going to run out of fuel. So we have to take care of ourselves. We do. We have to take care of ourselves first. As selfish as that may sound, it's actually very healthy. And so I do see a chat here. I see Keith saying that my problem-solving ability ended up in my codependency tendency. It made me feel good to help solve someone's problems. Exactly. Exactly. So that was your problem-solving ability. Yeah, and Dennis, see, and I love that there's some men in here too, because it's both men and women. We do this. Dennis, you're saying that, me too, people pleaser, you need to get it back. You do, as much as you give out, you have to receive too. It's a give and take. It's not just give, give, give. And it's not just take, take, take. We have to find a healthy balance. One last quote by Ernest Hemingway. He says that the most painful thing is losing yourself in the process of loving someone too much and forgetting that you are special too. And that's what we do. We often forget about ourselves because we're giving to people, we're giving to others. We forget about ourselves. We forget that we're important and that we matter. And we have to give to ourselves and fill up our own cup. Carolina says that, how can I feel fulfilled before entering a relationship and suddenly find out you're codependent after a breakup? Yeah, and that's the thing. It's through experience. Remember in the beginning, I talked about how I took 2 years to feel fulfilled and was ready to go and entered the relationship and realized that, oh my gosh, I'm totally codependent. So it was that life experience. And with that awareness, now we can do things differently. And Dennis said that time, it is exactly, it's time. It's experience and then time. Time is what heals. Okay, the last quote, there's actually one more that I wanted to share. It says that you only get to be a victim once. After that, you're a volunteer. You only get to be a victim once. After that, you're a volunteer. So just like what we were saying, once you're aware and you know what's happening, then it's up to you. It's up to us. When we get this awareness, it's up to us to do things differently. We can't play victim anymore because we know better. And once you know better, you can do better. So that's a lot about what this is all about, is raising our awareness and giving us new knowledge so that we can do better. We can make better choices, right? Okay, one model that I want to share with you, because I know you were saying, how do I change, or how do I realize what's going on before entering a new relationship? This model is designed by Ross Rosenberg, and it's the Continuum of Self. Okay, so it describes how we are on a spectrum. We're at one point in the spectrum. Everybody's at different sides. Now, the codependent on the spectrum in this model, you would be, if you're highly codependent, okay, you're always giving, you're always, doing things for others, and you're never making time for yourself. If you're highly codependent, then you would be a negative, a -5 on the spectrum. Now, if you are highly narcissistic, you probably won't be on this conversation, but if you know somebody who's highly narcissistic, meaning that they're always taking and they're using other people and they're always in it for themselves, then they would be a +5 on the spectrum. Okay, so highly codependent, -5, highly narcissist, +5. Now, the thing is, if you are, if you've got a healthy attitude in life, and sometimes you give and sometimes you take, well, you're going to be playing right around the middle there, right? You're going to be at the neutral point. As it says here, you have a balanced self-orientation. You know what's healthy when it's healthy to take, and you know when it's healthy to give. You don't use people and you don't let people use you. That's a healthy individual. And that's when you're right around the middle. Okay, now get this. The thing is, when two people meet, what are we looking for? If I'm using it in the context of dating. When two people meet and when they're dating, and you're looking for, and I hear this all the time, right? It's like, what are you looking for? Well, chemistry. I'm looking for chemistry. There needs to be chemistry. What is this thing called chemistry? Now, this spectrum describes chemistry, okay? Because if you are a -5 and you meet somebody who's a +5, what are you going to get there? Explosive sparks. It's going to be a highly charged situation. Chemistry, because it feels so intense. Oh my gosh, what is this feeling? It's a highly intense charge. So now we interpret this chemistry as love. Oh my God, this is amazing. I've never felt this way before. But it's not love. it's highly dysfunctional because you're with somebody who doesn't really know themselves and is overcompensating by giving. And on the other side, it's somebody who is taking advantage of the person who's giving. So this is a recipe for disaster. Only we don't know that to be true. We think that it's love, and it's because society, the media, movies, they promote this to us, right? We see it all the time, and we think that's what love is. We hear songs about it. You know, love hurts. We think that love hurts. It doesn't. That's not love. Okay, so if that's not love, what is? Now let's look at the middle. Remember we said that the middle is where there's that healthy balance, right? So if the middle is the healthy balance, well, what do you get when you're in the neutral zone? What do you get when you have, even if you have a -1 and a +1? Meh, right? It's kind of like boring, not much going on there. There's no sparks, there's no fireworks. Nah, next, swipe left or whatever it is. You don't give that person a second chance because there's no chemistry. So you move on. But actually you're missing out on an amazing opportunity for something that's healthy, that's wholesome, and that's real. So this spectrum, this model helped me so much, and it actually helped me to cultivate a relationship that I'm in now that is like nothing I've ever experienced. And it started off as very boring because it didn't have the sparks. But now 6 months later, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the healthiest relationship I've ever experienced. And I attribute a lot of that to understanding this model. So again, this model was created by Ross Rosenberg. And if anybody wants more information, I can email them a resource list, and his book will be in there, as well as this scale. So that's a little bit about the continuum of self. And Keith, you're saying that I think that's why extremes attract. It's an opportunity to learn. Yeah, exactly. This is why, you know, they say opposites attract, right? But the reason for that is it's a shift in perception. And yeah, Keith, if you see it as an opportunity to learn, then that's what you'll gain from it. You'll gain a learning experience. But if you see it as this opportunity, or not as an opportunity, if you see it as something terrible that has happened to you, then it's going to be a pity party, and there's not much learning that can be done if you have that perspective. So it's simply a shift in perspective, and it's our attitude, right? So the next thing I want to look at is, what do you have? What is that relationship? What is it called? What does it look like when you have this highly charged dysfunctional relationship where one end of the spectrum is connected to another end of the spectrum? It is called a trauma bond. Trauma bond. Now, what is a trauma bond? It's similar to Stockholm syndrome. Now, Stockholm syndrome, if anyone's heard of it, I'm not sure, but Stockholm syndrome is basically a condition where the victim, person who is captured, feels like they have this alliance on their captor, where they actually fall in love with their captor. And this is a phenomenon that happened. It happened back in Stockholm. I think it was like in the 1960s or 70s, where these bank robbers came in and they took people prisoner. And the prisoners fell in love with the bank robbers. And that's how it caught the name Stockholm syndrome. So it's an actual condition that occurs, and it creates this cognitive dissonance. Oh, and with this cognitive dissonance, what happens is that you're neurologically, you're physiologically, and emotionally attached to the person who's causing you harm. So this is important because oftentimes, if you know somebody who is in a relationship that's abusive, the common thing to say or to think is, just leave them. You know, if they're hitting you, they're hurting you, they're putting you down, just leave him. Why would you be with somebody like that? And it's easy to say that from the outside looking in, but if you're actually in the situation, it's so hard to leave because of this, because of the trauma bond. And oftentimes we don't know what's going on. We don't know that it's a trauma bond. We're unaware of what's really happening. So trauma bond is very dangerous. The attachment makes it extremely difficult to leave the abuser. And the phenomenon compares closely to an addiction, to an obsession. you know, when I was stuck in this trauma bond, I remember thinking daily, like, oh my God, I'm obsessed with this guy. All I do is think about him. You know, we message each other constantly, and it's an obsession. I'm obsessed with him. But I thought that was healthy. I didn't know that there was anything wrong with that, because I figured, well, that's what love is. You know, when you're in love with somebody, you think about them all the time. And yeah, Dennis, you're saying that it's getting used to that partner thinking there is nobody else. Yeah, you think they're the only one for you, especially when you have them feeding you those lines saying, you know, there's nobody else out there other than you. You're the one for me. You know, I've never met anybody like you. And they're saying all these things to you, and then you're reinforcing it in them. It becomes highly attached and addictive. So that's a trauma bond. But with awareness, it is possible to remove yourself from this toxic situation. And the best way to do that is to go no contact. Just go cold turkey, right? You know, when you're breaking an addiction, what do they say? You have to go cold turkey. If you want to quit smoking, cold turkey. It's the same thing. If you're leaving a relationship, go no contact, and you have to block and delete them and get them out of your life. It's the easiest way to do it, if there's an easy one. Now, oftentimes, as I was mentioning before, is we confuse the trauma bond with love, but that's not love. It's a neurological, physiological, emotional addiction. It's not love. Keith, you're saying that you just did that, and it is tough when you truly do care. And that's the thing, is oftentimes codependents, you know, people pleasers, we care. Empaths, that's another word for it, right? We care about people. We want to help people. And when you care so much about somebody, you don't want to leave them. But oftentimes that's the best thing that we can do, is best thing for us and for them, is to leave them and not perpetuate this dysfunctional cycle. So how does this happen? How does the trauma bond get formed? So there's something called intermittent reinforcement. And this is how one gets stuck into a trauma bond. Intermittent reinforcement. It's a cycle. And this cycle happened to me, and I was unaware of what was going on. But after it happened, I researched it, and I saw that I'm not the only one that this is happening to. In fact, this happens to thousands and thousands of people. What happens is when you first meet somebody that has cluster B personality disorder, they idealize you. They shower you in gifts and attention, and they love bomb you. You know, they tell you that you're their world and that you're the only one for them. And it feels good. It feels good to have so much attention and someone to tell you that, you know, that you're amazing, you're beautiful, you're smart, all these things. They feed your ego. It feels good. That's the idealization phase. After the idealization phase, you know, after they ask you to marry you in front of all your friends and family and buy you a big fat diamond ring, after they have you kind of hooked in where they know you're not going anywhere, they slowly start to devalue you. And these are the red flags, but you've already got the rose-colored glasses on, so you can't identify the red flags. But if you are more aware, or if you know somebody and you can be on the outside and you can look in, you can possibly help them with these red flags and point out these red flags. So what are the red flags? Well, the silent treatment, that's a red flag. I mean, come on. If you really care about somebody, you're not going to just ignore them. You're not just going to stop talking to them. That's a red flag right there. I mean, I understand if somebody needs space and they say, hey, look, I need some time right now. I need a timeout. Give me a day or give me an hour, whatever it might be. And then they go and they do whatever they need to do to get mentally stable. That's understandable. But if somebody just cuts you off and they just ignore you, that's not acceptable. That's not acceptable behavior. Another red flag is if they start finding things that are wrong with you and putting you down, especially if they're things that in the beginning they first admired within you, and all of a sudden now they don't. I know one of my examples is with my narcissist that I fell for. In the beginning, he loved that I was so committed to helping community, and you know, I had a charity and I was always giving back, and he loved that. And in fact, he started coming with me and doing these charitable things with me. And he thought I was amazing for it. But then in the relationship, a few months down the road, he started putting me down. Oh, you're going out? Oh, you're going to go do that again? Oh, see, you never want to spend time with me. All those people are more important than me. And that's a red flag right there. Start putting you down for things that they once admired. Another red flag is if they all of a sudden just disappear and they don't tell you where they are. Red flag. People who care about you are going to let you know where they are, what they're doing. If they start blaming you for their own issues, projection, right? They start projecting their anger and insecurities onto you rather than being accountable for how they feel. Red flag. If they're unavailable, especially when you need them most and they're not around, another red flag. If they get angry or they start playing tit for tat, that's another red flag. If they are inconsistent with their emotional or physical intimacy, this plays into the intermittent reinforcement that leads you into a trauma bond. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in more detail here. But the last red flag, which is a biggie, is gaslighting. Gaslighting, a lot more people are becoming aware of this, but gaslighting is basically crazy making, where they make you question yourself, okay? And you'll say things to them, you'll be like, oh, remember you told me that you wanted to do this thing. And they're like, what? I never said that. What are you talking about? And you're like, wait, what? No, I could have swore. And they're like, no, I didn't say that. You're crazy. And you're like, oh, yeah, I guess so. I guess maybe, I don't know. I wonder why I thought that. And you start to second guess yourself. That's gaslighting. So all these are red flags and they're important to pay attention to. And if you have a friend and you recognize that your friend is going through all this and she's got these red flags, how do you share this with the friend? Oftentimes, and I know with me, my friends didn't share it with me because they didn't want to interfere, or they saw how in love I appeared to be, so they didn't want to say anything. I did have one friend that spoke up and said something to me, and I got to say, that friend I'm super thankful for, because she called it out and she said it how it was, and she was the only friend that did that. So if you have a friend that's going through something like this, I highly encourage you to say something, even if you think that you don't want to ruffle any feathers or you're not sure. Just do it. Just say something, because it could potentially change their life or save their life. So those are the red flags. Again, a lot of these play into the intermittent reinforcement. I'm going to skip this video because it's just due to time, but there's another video I want to play that talks about it as well. So this is just a 2-minute video in it, and it talks about the trauma bond and intermittent reinforcement and how we get stuck in it. So here we go.
Intermittent reinforcement is when one person in the relationship sets the rules. The dog trainer, the casino owner, and in this case, the narcissistic partner. They give you rewards on a very inconsistent basis. And in this case, the reward is their love and their attention and their affection. And sometimes they give you something negative, like a mean comment, or they just completely ignore you. But because you want to extract this reward so badly, you stay with them. And you keep trying to please them. Because when the love is good, it's amazing. And you've been conditioned to keep pleasing them and keep trying, hoping to get that reward. A narcissistic codependent relationship as a whole is terrible, but it's punctuated by little bits of good times. And rather than focus on the big picture, we focus on just the positives, and we try to eliminate the negatives. Now, your dog will do a trick or follow a command every time you ask them to do it, even if they don't always get a treat. Sometimes you give them one, and sometimes you don't. But because they've had this treat before, and they know how great it is, they will always have that hope in the back of their minds that you'll give them a treat. So casinos and other gambling institutions, they know this concept very well. They've taught you that sometimes you win, and sometimes you lose. You lose a lot more often than you win, but you'll always have that little glimmer of hope that you're going to win. So you just keep trying. And even if you lose 10 times in a row, you always think, okay, next time I'm going to win. I'll try one more time. Narcissists have conditioned us that even if they treat us badly most of the time, we know that when we do win, we feel so lucky and the reward is so amazing. And we're willing to put up with being treated badly. Now, when it's bad, it's really bad. When it's good, it's incredible. So you're constantly thinking of how you can eliminate the bad times and only have the good times. So now you're the one going nuts. You're the one trying to figure out how you can make everything great. And in doing this, you show the narcissist that he can treat you any way he wants, because you'll always keep coming back for that treat.
Intermittent reinforcement. So that's how it works. And it's sad if you think about it, you know, that somebody would treat others like that. But when you're aware of it, you don't have to fall for it. So you get stuck in this trauma bond through intermittent reinforcement, right? And like you're saying, the difficulty in helping a friend in this kind of situation is that the codependent will not easily disclose, the narcissistic traits, the red flags. Oh, Angelica, is that you? Yeah. It's true. And that's what happened with me. So Angelica, who commented, is my friend. Angelica was, remember I talked about when he proposed to me, Angelica was the first girl that was sitting there with the rose. And and I didn't share with my friends really what was going on because out of fear and wanting to protect my partner, you know, not wanting to talk poorly behind his back. I wanting to have his back, wanting to support him, right? So that often does happen. So how do you support a friend if they're not willing to open up? Just be there for them when and if they are eventually ready to open up. Okay, because what happens after that is the final discard. So remember I said it's a cycle. The final discard. After they devalue, they discard you and they let you go and hope that you'll come begging for them to stay, which is what I often did. But that doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes they use the Hoover technique. So this is what it looks like. They idealize, they love bomb you, shower you in attention. After they idealize you and they kind of get you hooked into the relationship, they start to devalue and put you down and find faults with you. And then they just discard you. You know, that's it. I don't want to be in this relationship. It's over. I'm done. Go through the forest of broken dreams and they can either hoover you back or the codependent wants to stay in that relationship. And then the cycle happens all over again. Idealize, devalue, discard. It's this vicious cycle and it's so hard to get off of this cycle, to the point where many people stay in these toxic relationships for years, if not for a lifetime. So this is what happened to me. And when you're in a cognitive dissonance and you're in this kind of fog, it's hard to find a way out. Logic doesn't often help. For me, I hated the way that I was feeling, and I didn't understand what was happening. I couldn't make sense of it. And I wasn't talking to my friends about it. And so I turned to Google. I started Googling the behavior and trying to understand. And the moment you start Googling someone's behavior in an effort to understand is probably the biggest red flag you'll ever need, right? You know that something's wrong if you're Googling their behavior. And for me, I was like, you know, maybe it's bipolar disorder, or maybe there's something going on. And I just need to help him. If I could just find out what's wrong, then I can help him. And, you know, maybe I just need to be better. One of the things I Googled was, why does my partner hate me? And a book that I came across was Men Who Hate Women and the Women Who Love Them. And this book talked a lot about misogynists, right? So men who hate women, misogynist. And it talked about the women who fall for misogynists. And the book helped me because there was this one line in it that acted as this kind of raft, like a life raft, that helped me get out of this, these rapid waters. And what the line was, is she said, instead of asking yourself, what's wrong with me that he treats me this way? Ask yourself, what's wrong with him that he's behaving this way? And that was my big aha moment. And I remember writing that down and being like, yeah, I keep asking myself, I keep going like, what am I doing wrong? How can I be better so that he won't get so mad all the time? What can I do? What can I do? But reading this gave me a shift in perception, where I could then look at it and see that maybe I'm not doing anything wrong. Maybe there's nothing wrong with me. And maybe he's the one who has the problem. And so I started looking at having more compassion for myself and having a bigger picture understanding of the situation that I was in. So this allowed me to then be accountable for why I was putting up with this. And I stopped asking, why does he keep doing what he's doing? And I started asking, why do I keep allowing this to happen? What do I need to do to change this? Again, when you're stuck in a trauma bond, it's hard to use logic to get out of it, but it can give a little bit of awareness and direction. And so then I came across another book by Jackson Mackenzie called Whole Again. And in this book, he describes that we are enough. You are enough just as you are. You don't need to get anything outside of yourself. You don't need to get love from another person to understand that you're enough. And he also shares a story in this book. And I wanted to quickly share this little story. It's about a 3-minute story. And this story was another big aha moment that helped me, and it's helped some other people as well to understand who they are, and to understand that they don't need to be codependent and rely so heavily on somebody else to feel good about themselves. The book is called The Box, and it goes like this. Once upon a time, there was a little girl, and her parents taught her a lot of messages that aren't supposed to be taught to little children. No, you don't matter. Your feelings are wrong. You are wrong, and our feelings matter more. You're bad. Those messages were way too confusing and very painful, way too painful for any little girl to understand. So one day, an angel came down and gave her a box. Here, said the angel, put those messages in this box. And so the little girl put the messages in the box. And the angel closed the box for her. And suddenly, the little girl didn't feel so bad. She didn't hurt so much anymore. I mean, she didn't feel very good either, just kind of numb, She felt just kind of like empty and disconnected from the world around her. But it was better than feeling the shame of feeling defective and feeling denied love. And as she grew up, she encountered more pain, bullies at school, abusive relationships. Fortunately, though, she had a solution: the box. So she put more bad feelings into the box, and she's felt empty again. But to avoid the feeling of emptiness, she fantasized about finding the perfect love from someone. And she offered perfect love to anyone and everyone. She copied other people, she acted like them, just so that nobody would ever want to leave her. But despite all her best efforts, the same thing kept happening over and over again. And every time she put the pain in a box and started over, determined to find the person who would make her feel whole and loved. Except the box was starting to get full, and it was starting to spill over. She couldn't control it. She would just cry and yell at people that she cared about, which made them leave. And then she felt ashamed, and she buried those things deeper in the box, and she struggled to keep it shut. Why does the same thing keep happening to me? She screamed. Why does the world hate me? All I need is a perfect lover, and then I will be happy. But you keep sending me pain and rejection. I can't take it anymore. My box is overflowing. I mean, how can I possibly find the perfect lover with this box inside of me? I hate it. And so that night, the angel appeared in her dreams. darling, the world does not hate you. The world loves you. I love you. I love you so much. And I'm trying to guide you down a different path than the one that you're on. I'm trying to burst open your box so that you can feel the pain from so long ago and heal it. But every time I remind you of this pain, you feel betrayed and you block it away. And it's not betrayal. It's an opportunity to finally open the box and become the pain inside. I mean, you can spend the rest of your life running from the intolerable pain and running from the feeling of inner defectiveness that arises when you're abandoned or rejected. Or you can keep avoiding it with grandiose fantasies and dramas and accomplishments and impulsive behaviors, but those things will not help you. I gave you the box long ago because you were only a child and you had no other way to cope. But you're an adult now and you don't need this box. You can experience the pain inside and you can find true love on the other side, my love. The love that you have always sought from others inside your own heart. And when the girl awoke, she realized for the first time in her life just how loved she had always been. And so she looked down at the box and she said, okay, I'm ready. And then the angel watched proudly as the child began her long journey home. And so this is obviously a metaphor for something that so many of us do, is we take these feelings, right? These feelings that a lot of us are given. And we take the opposite feelings. We say, okay, so I feel like I'm not enough. Well, no, I am enough. I am worthy. And what we do is we paste these affirmations over the box in an attempt to try to make ourselves feel better. We get these positive affirmations, we say, I'm lovable, I'm strong. And we just keep building them up over top of the box, trying to make ourselves feel better. But the thing is, these affirmations, these words are simply like Band-Aids and they're covering this up. But eventually what happens to Band-Aids is they fall off, right? They fall off and what are we left with? We still have the core wound. We still have the box there. So how do we face this instead of just having these Band-Aid solutions? What do we do once and for all to let go of the box and to deal with what's going on? We can't do what we've always done because we're just going to keep getting what we've always got. So we need to do something different. And what I found that helps is to finally open the box and deal with what's going on inside of it. And recognize that all these messages that tell me that I'm not enough and that tell me that something's wrong with me, that I'm unlovable, all these messages are messages that were given to me by other people, by situations, and they actually have nothing to do with me. The only reason that they're here is because I continue to hold on to them when I can simply let them go and stop letting them rule my life. And then I can get into the driver's seat and I can recognize that I am enough. No matter what other people say, think, or do, no matter what my external world, no matter what's going on outside of me, I can know that I'm enough. And that comes from my own intrinsic self-worth that I have to find and cultivate on my own. And when I do that, I then naturally have these boundaries that don't allow other people to walk all over me. I don't allow other people to treat me in disrespectful ways. Because we teach people how to treat us by deciding what we accept and what we don't accept. Well, now that I know my worth, I'm not going to accept somebody who's going to yell at me or put me down or name call me. I won't accept that into my life because I know my worth. I'm not going to have to explain myself to others. If I say no to someone, it just means no. I'm a good person. And if I say no, it has a good reason behind it. I don't need to give you a long explanation for it. And my friends know that too. If anybody comes into my life and I find myself having to explain myself in paragraphs or I'm constantly walking on eggshells, I know that that's not a healthy relationship and I need to get out of that sooner rather than later. this all comes from knowing oneself. And all these different things that we looked at today are ways to get clear on the situation you're in and how to better identify what's going on. So we covered narcissistic personality disorder, what that looks like, type of person who gets involved with the narcissist, so a codependent. We looked at the relationship that's formed, which is the trauma bond. And then we touched upon self-worth and how to cultivate self-worth. It's an ongoing process, right? Learning to like ourselves, because we live in a world where we're constantly told that we're not enough and that we need to do more in order to be more. It's hard to differentiate your own value from everything external from you. It's hard to find ourselves when we're constantly bombarded by expectations and by the media and by everybody telling us, everybody else's opinions. So the best way to find your self-worth is to go within and find yourself, find who you are. And you don't need to go away to a meditation retreat. You can do that simply by having the intention. Have the intention that you want to learn more about yourself, about who you really are, not what everybody else wants you to be. And once we identify who we really are, then naturally, as a byproduct, boundaries are formed. Boundaries aren't something that we need to create. Boundaries happen when we get clear about who we truly are. And once we're in that space, then we can look at creating a healthy relationship. What is a healthy relationship? What does that look like? So I've come to know now that a healthy relationship involves two secure, independent people who aren't in a rush to make something happen because they're patient enough to let something happen, to allow the love to flourish between them, to allow love to grow between them. It's a give and take. It's a healthy balance. And in order to do that, one really needs to know who they are, right? They need to have a sense of self-worth. In order to create something healthy, you have to be healthy. Most importantly, though, if you are privy, if you've been subject to a lot of dysfunctional relationships and that's all you know, and let me tell you, most people in our culture have dysfunctional relationships, or we grew up in dysfunctional relationships. It's actually more rare to see a healthy relationship than it is to see a dysfunctional relationship. So if that's all we ever know, then how do we have anything different? How do we break the norm? If you want something different, you have to do something different. So like I talked about in the beginning, when I identified that spectrum, the continuum of self, remember the spectrum with the +5, -5, codependent, narcissist. If all we know is that intense charge, then that's what we're always going to look for and identify that to be love. But something different would be that neutral energy, that where there's no chemistry, there's no fireworks. And you might think that takes the excitement out of it. But let me tell you from experience, it's actually more exciting to be in a healthy, loving relationship than it is to be in a dysfunctional relationship. So if you want something different, you have to do something different. So I encourage anybody who might be out there and dating and looking for something healthy to do something different. Don't go for what you've always done. Don't go for what you've always sought, what you've always pursued, because you're just going to get more of what you've always got. Do something different. Try something new, and you'll be surprised by what you might find. Last slide is leaving on, again, I can't reiterate this enough, is know your worth. Because once you know your worth, you'll stop giving people discounts. That's it. And I'd love to open it up to some questions if anybody has any questions. I'm going to stop sharing this. There we go.
Friends in the Zoom talk, you are welcome to continue using the chat box, or you can unmute yourself if you want to get on the on the old microphone and ask a question to Vanessa. And I'm also going to keep an eye on the Facebook page over here and see if anybody has questions over there. I don't see any yet.
Okay, and feel free to turn on your camera too, if anybody likes.
I actually have a question.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, this is Jeanette speaking from the library, by the way. I'm wondering, so this is an interesting time in terms of people isolating with their partners. And you might be isolating with a partner who is less than ideal for you. I'm wondering now, not talking about dangerous situations, which are unfortunately also happening, and maybe Allison would like to speak to that later. But I'm thinking about people who might be isolating with a challenging partner. Do you have any advice for them, Vanessa?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, reach out, speak up. There's people want to help, and people care, and nobody thinks anything less of you. In fact, they see that as courageous when you have the ability, the capacity to speak up and reach out.
And I just want to add to that, I think the thing that we tend to see with the Women's Center is so many women feel that they're the only ones going through this and they feel quite alone. But just realize and recognize that, there's all different levels of uncomfortable or different situations with relationships. And, it's the best thing to do is reach out to a friend. If you're not comfortable with that, reach out to community members. There's a ton of great services in town, but really just talk, just get it out there to somebody, so you don't feel so isolated and so alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's it. Just speak up and like I said, people want to help. You're welcome to reach out to me too. I'm always happy to help. And Keith is saying, once I finally accepted I was enough, I didn't need to find someone to complete me. And I was able to accept each relationship for what it was. Yeah, absolutely. And then Ali is saying that this signal is being shared as a way to tell someone on a call if you need help.
That's awesome. Thank you, Ali. Allison, would you be able to tell us quickly what services are still being offered by the Women's Center?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So we are currently, our drop-in center is closed for personal one-on-one sort of people popping by, but we're definitely available via phone. We can do chats online. We do messages. We do have a text line that you can text us as well. So at the drop-in center, we're available Monday to Thursday, 10 to 4. If you want to call in. We also do have our 24-hour crisis line, which is, live person here in the Sea to Sky who can help you out with anything, any need that you may have, whether it be finding a safe place that you need to go to right away. If you're just wanting some information about different options or different referrals within the community, if you're in need of any help at all, we're always there to listen, to help, even if it's just you just need to talk to somebody. So yeah.
Awesome. Vanessa, there is a question over on the Facebook feed. Can you see those? Can you see that comment section?
No, I don't.
Okay, let me read it to you then. So Lee asks, how best to stay no contact after a final breakup during this time? It seems doubly difficult.
Yeah, after a final breakup. Mm-hmm. So if there was violence involved, the best way, and I just say this is the best because what I did was I reached out to the RCMP. And that way you can have a condition, you can have restraining order placed so that they can't contact you, and you will be less likely to contact them. I know if I hadn't done that, I would have contacted him, and we probably would have, yeah, got back together. Because I know it's really, really hard because of, again, that trauma bond. You're addicted, you're obsessed, and that's like your life support. So the best thing to do is to bring in extra support that you can, and RCMP is I found the best way to do that. If you're uncomfortable going to the RCMP, you can always reach out to friends and family, and like we were saying earlier, speak up, share what's going on. You don't keep it to yourself. Get it out there and talk to people, and people will be more than willing to help you.
There's one more comment over on the Zoom chat. Can you see that one from Carolina?
Yes. So my friend is seeing someone new. I believe he's manipulating her, and she's smitten by him. And I'm afraid to tell her to be careful, for example, because we might have a fallout and I won't be able to contact her again. Yeah. And I totally understand that, because a lot of my friends were in the same boat as you. What I can say to that is your intention is pure. Your intention is that you want to help her, and she can pick up on that, right? If your intention is to put her down and to make her wrong, she'll pick up on that energy. But if your intention is genuinely you want to help her, you're there for her, you're her friend, she will resonate with that, and she'll be less likely to be defensive. And the approach that you use is so, it means everything. If you come at it in this very in this way where you're putting her down, then she won't relate to that. But if you approach her in this kind and gentle manner, and if you have this introduction to her where you're saying, hey, I care about you, and I really want to be here for you as a friend. And as a friend, this is what I see happening. And then just tell her, this time when he called you, I saw him say this to you. And how did that make you feel? And maybe just ask her more questions. And rather than making assumptions, just help her to feel like she's in a safe space so that she can open up and start talking about what's going on for her. Yeah, that's something that I found to be really helpful. And then you're saying, on another note, being in Whistler is very hard to keep away from an old relationship, currently being in no contact. How can we make that easier for us? Or what to do if you run into them when you're not ready for that? Yeah, if you run into them. So again, that comes back to having a strong sense of self-worth and knowing who you are, finding your confidence in yourself, and knowing that you're going to be able to handle it, knowing that, no matter what happens, if you do run into him, it's okay, because you're doing the work on yourself. You're letting go of any resentment that you might have and taking ownership for your part, and you're feeling good about who you are, so that when you do, or if you ever do run into him, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay, because you're doing the work. And you can simply, smile at him. You don't have to be rude. You can smile and just walk the other way, or you can ignore him, whatever works best for you. But again, it comes down to how your relationship with yourself and how you're feeling about you. Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, folks. Well, if we don't have any other questions, I would like to remind everybody who's watching right now that this video will stay up on our Facebook page. So you'll be able to find it again under the event title, Freedom Starts From Within. You can share it with friends, maybe a friend who might need to hear what Vanessa had to say tonight. So you'll be able to find it that way. Vanessa, what is the best way for folks to get in touch with you if they have any follow-up questions?
Yeah, you can email me at, so you can email me at, I'll write it in the chat, actually, my email address. And I also just started, oops, it's a little bit dark in my room. I also just started working with United Way. So you can contact me on my work cell phone number. You can text me or you can call me, and I can help you with any resources you might need that way as well. So I'll write that number in the chat as well. Yeah, so I just took on a contract with United Way during COVID to help more people that may need support during this time of isolation. And obviously United Way is connected to many different organizations that have lots of resources in place for anything from food to technology, emotional support, lots of different things that we can help with. So yeah, I'll put the my contact info in the chat here. Here it is.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you so much, Vanessa. This was really informative. And I also want to remind everybody that the Women's Center is still there, even though their drop-in center is closed. You can still access their services. You can check them out on their website. I want to vouch for their services. I actually talked to one of their staff recently about a friend that I was concerned about, who I had been talking to on Zoom, and she seemed a little bit off. And the Women's Center worker who spoke to me recommended that I send her a separate message saying, hey, is everything actually okay? And it turned out that this friend didn't feel comfortable saying anything on Zoom because her partner was in her small apartment with her. So it wasn't until I reached out via text and said, hey, are you actually okay, that we even were able to start a conversation about it. So I'm very grateful for the Women's Center for that advice.
Mm-hmm.
All right, everybody. Well, we've got lots of thank yous rolling in here over on the Zoom chat. Thanks for everybody who tuned in on Facebook. We are just about out of time, so we will say goodbye to Vanessa and to all of our attendees, and we hope you'll share the link to this video with anybody you think might need it. All right.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Okay.
Thanks, Vanessa.